In this video, we are going to start a new unit about statistics. So today we're going to talk about marginal and conditional distributions. So in this first video, I'm just going to talk about a lot of vocabulary words, and then I'll do another video that works through an example of using all of those vocabulary words. So the kind of questions that we're going to be asking ourselves during this unit, or during this lesson especially, are you more likely to survive a boat crash if you have a first-class ticket? Do boys and girls like different colors? These questions are the kinds of questions that we can answer by examining data distributions. So we're going to use an example to kind of help us define these next vocabulary words. So we're going to look and we're going to think about, do adults and kids have different favorite colors? Okay, so we're kind of looking at two things. We're going to look at, is the person that we're asking the question to an adult or a kid? And then what is their favorite color? So first vocab word, individuals. So the individuals are the objects described by a set of data. So in this case, our individuals are people. And oftentimes they are going to be people. They can also be animals or objects. Or really anything else that you can, gather data from. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a categorical variable. Basically, a categorical variable is just a characteristic of the individual. Okay, so it basically just means some category that you can put them in that's not a number, right? So you could do eye color, or favorite ice cream, or favorite sport, or favorite subject in school. In this case, we're dealing with age and favorite color, right? Is the person an adult or a kid? And then what is their favorite color? So we're looking at two categorical variables. The next vocab word is relative frequency. So the relative frequency is the fraction or percent of the group who fall into a category. So for example, say we ask a bunch of people, if they're a kid or an adult, and then what their favorite color is. The relative frequency would be us saying, well, 20% of the people were kids, or 80% of the people had a favorite color of blue. Okay, that's the relative frequency. The distribution of a categorical variable lists the different categories and then states how many or what percent of each individual falls into each category. So that would basically be us listing, the 5 different favorite colors that we saw, and then how many people said that was their favorite color. And then listing adult and kid and saying what percent of the people fell in the adult category and what percent fell in the kid category. And that's going to tell us what the distribution is. So basically, how much of each data point did we get? Now, a two-way table is where you start combining and looking at your two different variables at the same time. So a two-way table is a table that's broken down into rows and columns. And basically, like along the top row, you have one variable, and then along the left side of your table, you have the other variable. So maybe in our situation, we would put along the top, we would say, is the person an adult or a kid? And then on the left side, we would list all of the favorite colors that people said. And then we would fill in the table to say, okay, we had 15 people that were adults that liked the color blue. So that we're going to put a number 15 in the adult column and the blue row. Okay. So basically, a two-way table helps us see if there's any relationship between the two variables. So it looks at them together. Because maybe we do this and we see that, like, oh my gosh, every adult who we asked, their favorite color was green or blue. But all the kids liked purple and green, right? So then we're seeing a difference between these two different variables, these two different categories. All right, marginal distribution. So marginal distribution basically ignores the inside of your two-way table and just looks at the percent of the individuals who fall into each category. So now, instead of caring about if the adults like yellow or blue, we just care how many adults are there. Okay, and instead of caring if the people that liked blue were adults or kids, we're just going to say how many people liked blue. So we're looking at the margins, which the margins are like the edges of our table. So you'll see in a little bit in our first example of what those margins will look like. Conditional distribution gives the percentage of individuals in just one subgroup, right? So now we're going to start looking at what percent of the people that we interviewed were adults that liked the color orange? Or what percent were kids that liked the color green? Okay, so now we're getting an even smaller kind of subgroup, and we're just talking about a very specific group of people. So these are some just really important vocab words that we're going to use throughout today. Before I end this video, which is the vocab video, I just wanted to show you an example of a two-way table. So if you look at this two-way table at the bottom of this page, it's showing us, well, basically the premise of this table is that in 1912 the Titanic hit an iceberg and some people survived and some people died, right? So we're looking here at two different variables. We're looking at survival status, so did they survive or did they die? And then we're also looking at what type of ticket they held. So are they first class, second class, third class, or are they part of the crew? So this is what a two-way table looks like. If you look at the top of the table, I've got one of my variables, which is survival status, right? So I've got either they survived or they died. And then on the left side of the table, I have the type of ticket. So I'm going to list out the different options for what kind of ticket they could have. We're actually going to finish filling in this table. It's missing parts of it. It's missing all the totals. So if you look at the bottom row and then the right column, we're missing all the totals. So we're going to go ahead and fill those in and talk about what they would mean. So if I want the total of this first row, I'm going to add the 203 and the 122 to get 325. And that's the total number of people that held a first class ticket. Then I'll add the next row and I'll get 285, and that's how many people held a second class ticket. The next row is 706, that's how many people held a third class ticket. And then there were 885 crew members that were on that ship. So those totals that we just talked about, those would be marginal distributions. Okay, we're just looking at people that held a certain type of ticket. We're not looking at whether they'd survived or died yet. If we total up our survival column, we're going to learn that 711 people survived and 1,490 died. Okay, for a total of, we had 2,201 people that were aboard the Titanic that day. Okay, so this is what a classic two-way table would look like. And there's tons of questions that you can ask and answer using a two-way table. And that's what we're going to do in the next video. I'm going to go through and we're going to ask and answer a ton of questions about this two-way table about the Titanic.